Does building a custom yacht cost more than a production vessel?
Not necessarily.
How long does a custom project take typically from design to delivery?
Depends. 2 to 5 years.
Austin, do you recall your first memory on a boat?
I was a little boy and I was with my grandma fishing in Norway.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Full Displacement, the Current Yachts podcast. We're here today to talk about custom boat building. And we have Austin Ellingsen, whose career in yachting actually spans over 20 years. First of all, congratulations, Austin, and welcome to the Current Yachts family.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Austin recently joined us, and he's here to tell us more about why some buyers choose the custom build route. But first, Austin, how did you get into yachting back in 2001?
Oh, interesting story. Probably similar to many others. It's often random how we end up doing things. I was doing real estate in Norway and coaching real estate agents in real estate. I sold the house to a CEO from Brunswick. After we closed on the house, he called me and said, I really liked how you sold my house, Austin. Can you come teach my guys how to sell boats? And from there on in, I've been in the marine industry. That was in 2001.
So what path did you take then to come to the United States, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, when I came to the U.S. in 2006 and 2007, I was looking for a company here to work with yachts. And I found, eventually I found Denison, which is a large dealer in the United States. I worked with them. I worked with Fountain Peugeot. I worked with Beneteau, Privilege, and other brands over the years. It's been an interesting journey. And in 2020, I realized that I would like to be I would lean more towards custom builds. And I left the yacht broker industry and started my own thing and had quite a few clients coming into COVID. Sadly, COVID shut down multiple projects for me like it did for others. Eventually, I was able to finish up a project with a client doing charter boats, and I built them 2 catamarans that they are now using off Waikiki Beach in Hawaii.
So help me understand here, who actually buys a custom yacht? I have to say it's a little bit opaque. I was doing some research ahead of this podcast. Couldn't really find a lot of great information. It sounds like you're often a matchmaker between clients and a shipyard. But the first question I can't help and ask is, why do people even go that route? Is there like a production issue, or is this the market just does not produce the type of boat that someone is looking for and therefore they go to the custom option?
That's a good question. I mean, and the answer is a little bit different for recreational clients and commercial clients.
Yeah, let's jump into recreational first.
Yeah, the recreational client that comes to me, they want something, they know what they want. This is not their first boat. They want a specific product to either go fishing, go diving, and go do something with. They have a mission. But on-the-shelf boat, if we can call it that is in-store with all the dealers in the United States, or you can order it from the mainstream shipyards, that boat is more suited for the mass market. As soon as you get a special need, it's always a compromise to buy a boat. Hence why some clients come and they want to do a certain thing. And if the boat is above a certain value, it doesn't cost a lot more to build a custom boat versus buying a production boat.
So what would you say that threshold is? Like over what, $1.5 million or $2 million?
No, we'll probably see $3 to $4 million. If you
Okay.
get above $3 to $4 million, then it is not more expensive to buy a custom yacht. Under those numbers, it can be more expensive depending on what your needs are. But I mean, I also have clients like if you want a charter boat and you want a simple structure, you just want to be able to take people out and take them back in again. It might be cheaper for you to have a custom built boat versus buying a boat that's in stock in the United States. So every project is different.
And so for this particular application, let's say charter, that's much more purpose-built, right?
It is. Go on.
If we then take a step back and think of some of the questions that people ask, is your experience then, is it still fiberglass boats we're talking about? Is there steel? What other builds do you see?
Well, that also depends on what's important for the client. For a commercial client that uses the boat 24/7, maybe they even beach a boat up on the beach to pick up charter clients in like a client I have in Hawaii does. A fiberglass option can be great in many ways. An aluminum boat can be great in other ways. It mostly comes down to preferences and maintenance. Aluminum used to be the commercial option many years ago, but now with all the new technology we have, coating options, wraps, and also aluminum manufacturers, shipyards, they make aluminum boats look beautiful. So that was not an option 30 years ago, but now that is absolutely. You can make a beautiful recreational catamaran made by aluminum. So yeah.
So, what has been your specialty in your case, Austin? Would you say catamarans for the individual private use?
I would say my specialty has been I saw a need, and this is what I always like to do. I would like to find a need and a niche and develop this with a client because many, like I said initially, many clients have a desire or a need and they can't find the right boat. So my strength has been finding the right shipyard for what they need, help them develop their ideas, and get a boat built based on what they want, not what's available.
Understood. So I would imagine you have to rely on your knowledge of existing shipyard and their longevity in the market because you want to have the assurance that the shipyard you choose, ideally established companies, can bring the project from plan to delivery. Explain that process a little bit. How do you even connect, say, with a new shipyard that you think might be a good fit for a project? What would that look like?
Well, here's the thing. I worked with shipyards or talked to shipyards in Europe, in Asia, United States, and my impression is that every shipyard have different strengths. There are different things they can do well, different things they cannot do very well. So my mission is always to kind of find a shipyard that will be the best fit for my current project. Like during COVID, I was working with it was a little bit kind of interesting maybe. I'll skip that start with this. During COVID, I worked with a client who had over 100 restaurants. He wanted to build a nice boat. He was not certain if he wanted to build a catamaran or a monohull. It was for his family, for his extended group of friends and business partners. And he just wanted a lot of toys. He wanted multiple cranes almost on every corner to lift toys here and there. Um, we worked with a shipyard in Europe for a while. I ended up talking to a shipyard in China that was ready to build a boat. But sadly, like I said initially, when COVID hit, a lot of people had to put their projects back in the drawer, which also happened to this client. Like I mentioned, he owned over 100 restaurants, and that was a tough task during COVID. So it all depends on the client. It all depends on the needs. I would say that very few shipyards are able to build the same boat with the same quality and features.
I wanted to also cover at which point of the project you determine the intended use of the boat. So we make sure that the project will fit their desires. How do you go about doing that?
Well, that starts with like when a customer contacts me. I mean, my first question is always, where will the boat be used? What time of year will you use it? And it can be an easy process, or I might even have to go in to look at weather patterns, certain times of year. What are the sea states, currents? Is this a feasible plan the client has? Do they need a full displacement boat, or what do they need? So many times the client come with some short description of what they want, but the math behind it, what they need, might be a lot more advanced than the client really knows from the get-go.
So I understand different shipyards may have different strengths or specialties. Can you give us some examples across your past experience of things that became very obvious about one shipyard or another to drive the point home for the listeners?
Well, absolutely. Like there are many shipyards that specialize in a certain type of vessel with a simple construction, but ocean-going vessels, good quality, not very well equipped. And then you have other shipyards that specialize in comfort features, specialize in luxury details, like a semi-custom shipyard like Sunreef that everyone knows. They are very good with design, luxury. Like it's hard to beat them on that. Then you have other shipyards that specialize in commercial vessels. They had never installed an air conditioner. They don't even offer it. So you find that these shipyards are so different in what they do. And that's what I find so interesting about doing the research too, that you're really looking for that perfect package for the client.
When we're speaking of price of these projects too, we have to take into account the timeline, but also the currency that we might have this project quoted in. Is the local currency typically used, or euro versus dollar, and how does that get adjusted over time? Because as you said, you may agree on a initial scope and quote at a given time and not see your boat built for 2 years and then delivered 2 years later, or how does this get managed?
That's different from shipyard to shipyard. Some shipyards are willing to, let's say, that do a maximum change in the inflation in the contract, that the shipyard will agree to eat the cost if it goes above a certain amount. Other shipyards are not willing to do that, and that's always a negotiating point. Most shipyards can do in dollar. They can price something in dollar because they know American clients they prefer prices in dollar. Um, some European shipyards are hard on their euro, but any Asian or shipyards that are not outside of the American continent, on our west side, will always give us prices in US dollars.
So, do you go and visit the shipyards that you recommend to your clients almost like every time? Is that a part of your checklist?
Well, yeah, I do visit during the build, and I inspect the vessels while they're being built at least 2 times, preferably more, just to see that we are where we need to be with quality, and that all the projects that we want on the boat are to the client's specs.
How many factories have you seen in your life?
Shipyards, I have seen many, maybe 10 big ones. They're all very different. That was when I started this and I started to see different shipyards. My biggest surprise was how different they are, how different they work, and how different the products are that are coming out of the shipyards. Especially if it's a more advanced project. I mean, everyone can build a hull and put some stuff on it, but like I said initially, when it comes to different shipyards' strengths, it's a huge variation out there in what you can and cannot get.
So, how long would a project like this take then for the size that you're familiar with? Let's say a $2 or $3 million boat, spec'd by a client, from dream to reality. How long does it take?
Well, it depends. So here's the thing: like most shipyards, most healthy shipyards that have a solid business, they can start to build right away. You're going to be in line, and you get to buy a slot. So you might start building in a year, maybe sometimes 2 years, and you kind of need that often to both have a naval architect draw the vessel, and then you need all the systems engineered and get ready before anyone does anything with the boat. So I would say 1 to 2 year planning, and then 2 to 3 years to build it, all depending on how big it is. Some boats can be built in less than a year, but most projects last a couple of years.
Okay, very good. So I wanted to now dig into the pros and the cons, right? So for some of our listeners who are considering this avenue, perhaps they've been looking for the perfect boat, haven't found it, and are thinking, hey, this is maybe what I should do is buy a custom made boat for me. And what I've heard people say in the past is they almost love the process as much as they love the boat. Has this been the experience your clients have had?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is the experience, because when you build something, you are seeing that your dreams, your wishes, I mean, what you visioned and what the architect drew for you, you're seeing, and the whole thing comes alive. It's being built before you. And it is an exciting process. And this is the part I love to do, because you build this close relationship with clients that want something that either no one else has or something that just fits their needs. And when it's all happening, and the shipyard does a good job, it's just an amazing process to be a part of. I must say that the last project that I did with my Hawaiian client was a true experience, because I was involved from the design to the engineering. I even picked up the boats in Mexico and sailed them to Newport Beach before they were transported to Hawaii. So it was a fun process to be a part of.
So I would imagine another pro, other than the enjoyment, right, is you have a lot more control over the final look and layout and the design. But of course, you're going to have some constraint to work around. But do you help kind of orientate the customer and make sure that their wish list doesn't get too crazy? Because custom sounds like infinite, but in reality, there are going to be some constraints.
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that almost everything is possible. That is, with today's technology and build techniques, you can get almost whatever you want. I mean, if you buy a catamaran and you want a massive spa on the flybridge, today you can get it. 20 years ago, that was impossible or unheard of at the minimum. But you can get what you want, but some things are not very practical to build.
How do you manage this with the shipyards, with the clients? How does infinite become more guided so the boat in the end makes sense?
It becomes, or Infinite becomes guided through revisions. When we start with a project, we kind of draw up a structure, we draw the basic what the client wants. And then, of course, the client will always have wishes and dreams and needs that might or might not be a realistic feature on the boat. And we always consider that and guide the client into a solution that we think they will be happy with. The shipyards are often willing to stretch far and beyond what they normally do to get my clients happy, but it really comes down to what is a smart choice. Not all features are needed and recommended. Let's just say it like that.
So if we try to like go from start to finish, someone will come to you and they'll say, "Hey, I want to buy this kind of a boat, say a catamaran with this special layout and amenities, and it needs to be 55 feet and it needs to be this way and that way." And you'll be like, "Oh, okay, I think I've identified one or two shipyards." Do you then, before you go further, get a price point, or how do the people know which shipyard to choose? Of course, they, I presume, review their reputation and their build quality, and then based on the designs they've done before, they might choose one. But how do you get even a sense of the project pricing before you go too deep in the weeds and the white sheet dream boat that you could go and have any way you want?
What I've done, I start always by talking to shipyards that I know. And sometimes you can get lucky. You find a shipyard who built something similar, maybe
I
six
see.
months ago, a year ago, and they might have a mold that fits perfectly. So now we have a huge savings for my client. So that
Okay.
shipyard automatically gets now preferred. We try to work out a deal with them, or you call around, and if the client has certain needs, you discover quickly if this shipyard can or cannot build that boat. And sometimes that's where we choose where we end up because of what the shipyard can and cannot do. I've had clients who want a door that opens up midships from the stateroom, and because they saw that on some picture somewhere. And now most shipyards can actually do that, but that was also a very strange thing to request in 2018. But now, if you see especially larger catamarans now, you can open up the side of the ship, and there's a little balcony from the main stateroom. So you have all these wishes and ideas. And again, it comes down to what the shipyard did recently. It comes down to what the shipyard can and cannot do, and of course, how much the client is willing to spend.
And so let's say now I've picked my shipyard and I've chosen you to work with me. The shipyard will have their designer, or you'll give me a designer idea, or I've already picked a designer and they'll work with the shipyard. What's the marriage like at that stage?
Some shipyards have naval architects in house, and some of them are willing to arrange a meeting with a client before any payment have found place. Some shipyards do not have a naval architect or a designer. So you need to pay for your own and draw all the sketches before you come to the shipyard. And that's also a deciding factor in regards to who to choose, because a shipyard that has an in-house naval architect might often be more reasonable with engineering and design.
So obviously the pros are very enticing. It could be that it's not a whole lot more money than uh, off of a catalog, very nice boat, but you can make it your own. That's great. The flip of that coin, though, is that the moment you go off the track and make your very own custom boat, it could get weird or too different too soon. Are we killing our resale value in building a custom yacht? When clients ask you these questions, what do you say?
Yes and no. There's really no answer to that. The question is, what kind of boat are you building? Are you building a boat that's specifically designed to go diving in a special location, like in shallow water with X amount of tanks, like I'm talking about dive tanks? Or are we building a boat that's kind of similar to a traditional boat you can buy off the shelf, but it has some additional features that you really wanted? So it all depends on what it is. I would say in general, if you just want a boat that no one else has and you want some extra of this or extra of that, it's going to be just as easy, sometimes easier to sell. But if you have a boat with a specific purpose, it might be impossible to sell. So it all depends on what you need.
And I wanted to return a little bit backwards to that shipyard reputation and the builder risk, right? That could be associated with a project. Obviously, you help in that project to verify the reputation. Have you heard of horror stories, or how do we mitigate for these issues. They obviously don't share their accounts with you as far as their financial health. But what are some of the things that are put in place to protect a client through a custom build like this?
Well, yeah, it's similar to buying a new boat from any shipyard, really. If you buy a new Beneteau, you often pay parts as the boat is being built. You pay your payments, and it's the same thing for a custom boat. You pay when you buy a slot in their production schedule. You pay when the hulls are out of the mold or when the engines are in, or so it's all split up in 4 to 6 payments, which makes it safe for the client. Another thing is financing. We're going to talk about that too. I talked to some companies in the last couple of years, and they are willing to finance boats before they come to the US. That was very hard a few years ago,
Yeah,
but
it was.
now also on custom vessels, you can get them fully financed before they're even made. So there are opportunities now that we didn't have before.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier one of the things I anticipated could be a risk along with the builder risk, right? Is the scope creep. Does that ever happen? Do you manage all this upfront? How do we prevent scope creep from ruining a project timeline?
Well, you prevent that by proper engineering and drawing beforehand. As long as the engineering is solid, you rarely have any issues. The problem is also, or is always, when a shipyard does not have the right expertise. And this is something I saw from COVID. A lot of really good shipyards lost key employees because there was no building. So these employees left the shipyard, they left the city or even country, and started working with something else somewhere else. So many shipyards struggle with that after COVID, but I think that has stabilized now, and people have qualified engineers and workers to avoid problems like that. But in my experience, they always go back to the same thing: planning and engineering. If everything is done well, the build is normally a walk in the park.
And that's where you come in, right? Because you have done this before. And if you are buying a custom yacht for the first time, by definition, you haven't done this and you don't know, or you perhaps have expectations that are not matching up with reality.
Yeah, no, it's hard. I mean, most people have not done this before, and those are the people that do worry. Like, what shipyard do we choose? I'll give an example. I had a client call me in May of 2018, and they said, "Austin, we've been trying now for 2 years to build a boat. Wherever we go, it shuts down in front of us. We can't find a shipyard that's willing to help us. They only talked to us in the beginning." And this was a client with money. They were ready to build a boat. They just couldn't find a home for their project. And basically said, "We give up. If you can't help us, we're not going to do this. We're not going to build a boat." So I was able to help
Expecting that.
them, and we ended up with a boat they liked. But that's how hard it is. Client, it's to say, if you were going to build a house and you're not a carpenter or a framer, it's hard for you as a homeowner to build your own house, or at least oversee the build of your house. So
Right.
it's the same thing, but building a boat, you need to know certain things. You would like to know vendors, reputations, and have experience in the industry before you take on a project like that, of course.
So if I follow this comparison, then you might be the general contractor in some way for the boat
Yeah,
project?
you might well call me that. Maybe not the general contractor, but the supervisor of the project or project manager. Because one thing is to find a shipyard, get the drawings, but during the build too, sometimes situation arises, like it might be a build issue, it might be a scheduling issue, or it might be maybe an accident happened with the boat. Something gets delayed. Maybe you install the engines and there's an issue after you install them with some technical issue that makes those engines unusable for what you're building. So you never know what's going to happen, and it's important to have the experience in finding solutions when that happens.
And going back to obviously how exciting the project can be, it can be very time consuming as well for the client. And I guess that's where you can fill in the gap.
Yeah, it is. It is very time consuming to build a custom boat for sure, especially the first half of the project and the last 20% or 10%. Because the first half is a lot of coordination with ordering the right parts, making last minute changes. And the last part is cosmetic touches, like, because the client often had ideas now for 2-3 months, and before it's too late, they want to suggest those, and we make some changes when we can, like especially cosmetic changes. They're always made at the end when you see something come alive, you see live pictures of the boat, and you think, "Oh my goodness, maybe we
Yeah,
can do that."
this happens with every boat, any boat, like a new boat that you order. If
Exactly.
you get to see it before it comes off, you're like, wait, could we ABC?
Huh? Exactly. Very common.
And you were talking about the physical inspection at the factory. Do you accompany your customers when they take over their boat typically?
Always, always. Either I take them over on behalf of the client or I accompany the client, of course. It's a given.
Awesome. That sounds really exciting and fun. You mentioned financing earlier. I wanted to go back for a second. You had said something about getting financed, but this is really more from a financial planning standpoint. In other words, you had shared with us before we got on the podcast recording here that a lot of the time the clients don't actually need the financing, they want the financing. So I suppose that may aid the qualification process as well.
It does. I mean, absolutely it does. Like most clients that build a $3 to $5 million boat, they don't desperately need the financing. They often have assets they can use, or they can get loans through their own corporations or use personal assets. But the fact that they now choose to not use their own money, even if they have them, because they get so good interest or continue to invest their own money while they take a small loan to buy a $5 million boat. So it's very common to do that way.
Gotcha. And so, for anyone listening who is interested in doing some research on those shipyards, is there a venue, an event that they can go to and discuss with the shipyards their project, or at least do some secret shopping? Where would you send them to do their due diligence?
Well, what I do say to people that come without a plan, I say, figure out what you need, figure out what you want. And if you are uncertain about doing this, you're uncertain what this will look like, go to a naval architect and spend a little money, get some sketches, and then see if this is a project you want to initiate with someone like me or a shipyard. Because it's hard for an experienced buyer to coordinate and decide and finalize a project on napkins at the house, and then go to a shipyard and say, this is what we want built. Because most often there are engineering parts or naval architects will look at this and say, you can't build this boat like you want to because it has to be A, B, and C has to be done, and you're not accounting for those things on your napkins or drawings.
So, are there any like professional shows where you can see those shipyards, or are they well known? How do we even come across? They're kind of hidden, right? From
This is a service that is kind of hard to find because it's a very small market.
So, what I'm hearing you say is the capabilities that exist aren't always in front of the public eye, right? You're going to have to talk to a specialist of that industry. It could be you, it could be a naval architect that could say, well, I've worked with this shipyard and I love them. You can't just go to a boat show and knock on a door and say, I'm looking to build this custom boat. That's obviously not the route that I'm hearing people take. Is that right?
Yeah, it's mostly a B2B industry. Shipyards do not have time and capacity to serve every buyer that wants to know more about building their own boat. So
Or
it
to
has
even
to go.
qualify them, right? That is where somebody
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you
Or to even qualify
helps
them
make
because
sure.
they can. Shipyards are often on a different continent and they can't qualify clients. So they would like someone they know or someone from the industry to contact them. So that's what I recommend people to do. Get someone to help them before they even start.
And so there's one last question that I wanted to ask you earlier. How do you get paid, Austin? Are you paid by the client? Are you paid by the shipyard? What is the understanding upfront for people to know how this works? Because again, I researched these questions and those answers are not straightforward. So we're here to bring clarity, transparency. How does it get done?
And I would say it can be both ways. It can be either the client or it can be the shipyard. I mean, if a client comes to me and says, I want A, B, and Z, I want a custom yard to build it for me, and I want you to help me find a yard, and I can take it from there. Then I can help them coordinate their feature, their or desired feature on the boat, give them recommendations on equipment based on their use, and put them in touch with a shipyard. But most often, that's not enough. I mean, many clients want that, but when they come to the shipyard and everything is coming down on paper, everything is signed, there's a process that starts, a long process with a lot of decisions to make. And most clients want help with that. They want someone to manage the project for them. And if the client has initiated everything for me and I have not been in dialogue with the shipyard, the client pays for everything. If I can do this a different way, I talk to a client and the client tells me, I want A, B, and Z. I want you to talk to a shipyard, go and make a deal with them. And I will tell the client that, yeah, I can do that. And the shipyard might or might not pay me for bringing them a client. Then everything is free for the client and the shipyard pays.
So it is on a case by case basis, then pretty much.
Absolutely. 100%.
So before we let you go, Austin, tell us about a project you're currently working on right now as far as custom build. What's on your table?
Well, right now I am starting a project. It's a very exciting one. It is for a client, it's a US based client, and they want a 149 passenger catamaran as a charter boat for a specific location.
Can you share where they're looking to launch that boat, or is that private?
I can't share that, but I can say it's in a very touristy place. And this boat will transport tourists in and out of a harbor multiple times a day. And that's going to be an interesting project because it's going to be a big catamaran. It's going to be probably 40 to 50 foot wide. And I'm going to guess around 80 to 90 foot long. We're still working on that. But that's going to be a fun project.
Wow, that's really cool. What's the estimated delivery time frame on this boat?
Well, if we get everything engineered and kind of planned now the next year, I'm going to guess 2029 it's going to be delivery. We have a long way to go.
Well, that was a really good startup conversation on how to even explore the custom route option. We're not saying it's for everyone, but it's fun to dream. And if you have the budget and the capacity and the desire to launch yourself in a project like this, please make sure you get in touch with Austin. He can guide you, he can answer your questions. And Austin, would you also be able to recommend naval architects that you have worked with in the past, of course, along with the shipyards?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, we're always coming back to the same thing. What are their needs? If they have needs that I can recommend an architect for, absolutely, I would do that for sure.
Awesome. We're going to put the link for Austin's calendar below where you can book your free consultation. So use that time wisely and come prepared to ask Austin all of your questions regarding the boat building process, a boat made to you. Thank you for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Full Displacement. Have a great day and fair winds.